So thank you so much for joining me today for the first in a series of training videos for certified local governments in Wyoming. We kind of want to do just a going back to the basics sort of presentation series. And so here today we're starting with the very base of what everything is, what even is a certified local government. Um, this will be, I think we have about 7 or 8 presentations planned at this point, and we'll be holding them about monthly. And I'll be working with different members of the State Historic Preservation Office to draw on their expertise for some of these training videos. And I'm really excited to be able to share this with you. It's going to be, I think, around 30 maybe 40 minutes if I read real slow for this presentation. And it's a little bit more text heavy because I want you all to be able to go back and reference this whenever you'd like and not necessarily have to listen all the way through the presentation if you don't want to. So this will all be available for you. And thank you so much for attending today, and let's get started talking about certified local governments. Oh, if my mouse will work. Yay. Okay. So the first question, what is a certified local government? And we're going to be using the National Park Service definition, which is that certified local governments are municipalities that have demonstrated through a certification process a commitment to local preservation and saving the past for future generations. The CLG program was created in 1980 and is supported by the Historic Preservation Fund. The program is administered on a federal level by the National Park Service and on a state level by state historic preservation offices. And another quote from Preserving Your Community's Heritage, the CLG program is so much more than just a funding source. It has helped to institutionalize historic preservation by making it part of the local government. Oh, and as I go on, if anyone has any issues hearing me or seeing anything, please feel free to raise your hand or put something in chat. Should have mentioned that earlier. All right, to also go into another basic term, which all of you are probably familiar with, but this is also a topic we're going to do for our next presentation, kind of a history of historic preservation. But to start, what is historic preservation? Essentially, it is defined as the study of or in documentation, protection, and physical preservation of buildings, structures, districts, sites, and objects. In 1966, the National Historic Preservation Act was passed, forming the cornerstone of preservation efforts in the United States. And we'll also be going into that a little bit more in detail in our next presentation. This is a bit of a long quote, but I thought it was really relevant to everything that we do, so I'm just going to go ahead and read through it. It is from With Heritage So Rich. This is the re-release in 1999, but it is actually one of the super influential book that inspired the Historic Preservation Act of 1966 originally. So, what we want to conserve, therefore, is the evidence of individual talent and tradition, of liberty and union among successive generations of Americans. We want the signs of where we came from and how we got to where we are, the thoughts we had along the way, and what we did to express the thoughts in action. We want to know the trails that were walked, the battles that were fought, the tools that were made. We want to know the beautiful or useful things that were built and the originality that was shown, the adaptations that were made, and the grace notes to life that were sounded. We want to know the experiments in community living that were tried and the lessons that were taught by a brave failure as well as a brave success. So I feel that really encapsulates all the different aspects of historic preservation and what we want to show to people. As of now in Wyoming, so in 2024, there are 17 active certified local governments, which you can see listed here. And it's a pretty good spread all throughout Wyoming. Of course, every county, hopefully we will eventually have a certified local government that we can support. But we have a really good group of people here who, are all around the state. All right. And going into initially, like, why would you want to become a certified local government? One of the base things that we mentioned earlier is the Historic Preservation Fund, and that is one of the major benefits to being a certified local government. The CLG grants are available annually to help fund local preservation projects. SHPO is required to give at least 10% of their funding to the CLGs as subgrants, and we get our funding through the National Park Service through the federal government. Common projects funded by these grants include historic preservation plans, cultural resource surveys, building assessments, National Register of Historic Place nominations, NRHP site restoration or rehabilitation, and training opportunities. Historic preservation is also proven to benefit the local economy. There are economic, environmental, and social benefits that have been proven to come with historic preservation endeavors. There have been studies all throughout the United States, unfortunately not one done in Wyoming yet, but all of them concur on one thing. Historic preservation not only provides some stability to local communities, helps preserve local culture, but also creates an environment that people want to live in, to move to. It doesn't jack up home prices, but it does help for basically things stay stable instead of going up and down. Things tend to keep their value in historic districts. And this is something that is consistent across all sorts of studies in the United States. Some further benefits of being a certified local government. It was in one of the quotes earlier as well, but it is the official commitment to historic preservation that exists. By forming a certified local government, the local government itself is required to make a written legal commitment to identify and designate a community's local historic resources. This allows for communities to better appreciate and protect their unique history and culture by enshrining historic preservation as an official part of the local government. Something that the State Historic Preservation Office offers to everyone, but is particularly available for certified local governments, is technical advice. um, from both us and the National Park Service regarding a variety of projects, from rehabilitation of buildings to National Register of Historic Place nominations. So we are always here if you need some advice or help with projects. Moving on from that, if those benefits sound like something you're interested in, then how do you even go about forming a certified local government? Essentially, any city, county, township, or other political subdivision of Wyoming may become a CLG, and the local government must form an ordinance or resolution forming the commission or board, depending on the terminology that they use. The local government must then submit the ordinance and resumes of the commission members and a request for certified local government status to us here at SHPO, and then we will send that on and talk with the National Park Service. There are a few federal requirements you must follow to become a certified local government. You have to be active. You have to maintain an inventory of historic resources. In Wyoming, the State Historic Preservation Office is the one to actually maintain the inventory, but it's something that we can work the projects and research done by individual certified local governments into. You have to follow that state and local laws. That's important. And then I think maybe the most important as far as like our impact goes is serving as the public face for historic preservation in your community. Some further requirements are annual requirements. Meetings have to be open to the public and minutes from the meeting available for public access. Not every commission does this the same way. Some have them available in paper, some have them available online, sometimes in an archive, but essentially you can make it so that anyone in the public can find out what your commission is doing or participate in a meeting if they wish to. An annual report needs to be submitted to SHPO each year, and the next requirement is ideally, so technically not a requirement, each member of a CLG, at least one member of each CLG, I should say, attends a training opportunity each year. Depending on the year, there can be more or less opportunities, and it's harder in Wyoming to sometimes get to those opportunities. So we tend to have less of a strict, you have to do this or you can't stick around kind of um, feeling towards this particular requirement. And then there's also maintaining at least 3 members and meeting regularly throughout the year. This kind of differs for each CLG. I mean, ideally, it's about monthly with some breaks throughout the year, but it again depends. And outside of Wyoming, you'll probably hear very different requirements. We tend to be less strict overall. Again, our population is just smaller and more spread out, so we can't have the same kind of requirements that you would on like the East Coast or something. One of the topics that sometimes comes up is kind of what even is the difference between a preservation commission and a historical society. They do have overlap, but here are some ways in which they are distinct. Historic preservation commissions or boards are government entities funded by local governments, appointed by local elected officials. They are regulatory, they document historic sites, protect the built environment, and promote historic preservation. Historic societies or private museums are nonprofit, funded by members and donations. They are educational. I mean, both of us are. They document local history, protect archival materials, research history, and promote local history. And again, those things can overlap, but the most important thing to remember when you're looking at like certified local government projects is just the focus on the built environment. Again, the history obviously comes along with that built environment, but that can be why there can be a difference between the type of research projects that a historic preservation commission board would do versus a museum. All right, and moving on, kind of talking about the different roles that a CLG plays. What does it do? And we are going to take each one of these topics and break them down a bit further. But before that, I want to pause. If anyone has any questions, just put them in the comments real fast. And again, we can go towards those at the end, and we can always come back to slides if you have questions. Okay, and feel free to type, and I'll just stop for a second to address the question. So the topics we're looking at are survey, designation, nomination, regulation, review, advocacy, and public outreach. So starting with surveys. The documentation of cultural resources, buildings, sites, structures, objects, and districts, and this is the basis for all other preservation activities. And then there are 2 main types of surveys that we will deal with. The first is called a reconnaissance survey. And I've taken some quotes from other SHPO manuals in other states because I think that they cover and define this very well. So to define a reconnaissance survey, the primary purpose is to provide a first cut of buildings in a given area that appear to be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. Reconnaissance survey involves only a visual evaluation of properties, not an assessment of associated historical events or individuals. That information can be obtained through historical research conducted as part of an intensive level survey, the next level of survey. And so going down, intensive surveys. An intensive survey is the primary tool for identifying historical and architecturally significant properties and districts. The survey report provides an initial evaluation of each property's eligibility for the national and state registers of historic places by examining them within their historic context. It then provides recommendations of eligibility for the National Register and the State Register and creates a blueprint for leveraging the economic and community building benefits of historic places. And something to address in designation, which comes after surveys. There are usually 3 forms of designation, national, state, and local. However, Wyoming does not have a state register. As far as local designation goes, there are only a few communities within Wyoming that have that local designation. And local designation is based on the criteria decided by the local government. It provides the most protections for historic places, and it does not need to align with the National Register. And so some places will use this to put places that are very significant locally, but they may not be able to convince the National Park Service that it is significant enough to go on the National Register of Historic Places. At present, Teton County is the only government with local registers in Wyoming. The local registers are the Town of Jackson Historic Register and the list of historically significant properties. And in the presentation itself, you can find a link to those maps because they are very helpful and it is a great example. All right, and so talking about national designation is the National Register of Historic Places, which is overseen by the National Park Service. The park defines the register as the official list of the nation's historic places worthy of preservation, authorized by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. The National Park Service National Register of Historic Places is part of a national program to coordinate and support public and private efforts to identify, evaluate, and protect America's historic and archaeological resources. Designation on the National Register of Historic Places can provide benefits such as eligibility for federal tax credits and grants. There are no inherent protections in place for National Register sites unless a state or local government passes an ordinance to create those protections. And the National Register is going to be the topic of another one of these lessons. So we'll go into more detail about that too. Regulation. Wyoming has no regulations in place for the protection of National Register of Historic Places sites. Local governments can adopt legislation such as design overlays or demolition by neglect ordinances to protect their historic resources. Local or state regulations are common in the majority of CLGs in the United States, however, not in Wyoming. Examples of those who do have protection ordinances in place include Cheyenne, which has a demolition ordinance, Douglas, which has a historic district overlay, and Teton County, which has a demolition ordinance. And I think they may also have design guidelines for their historic districts as well. You can ask Michael afterward. And so there is kind of a sliding scale when it comes to levels of regulation. At the very bottom is just a request to comment. So that can be talking with your planning committee, and just when a historic structure comes up, they can reach out to you and you can at least give comments, but there's no actual action that you're allowed to take. And at the very end, which is, I don't think I've heard of anyone doing it, is reviewing interiors, regulating paint colors, things that are like extreme minutia. There could be some places that get to that level, but I'd say most usually get to like approving and denying demolition and maybe design reviews, especially in historic districts. So this is also a topic we can go into further, but it is harder to pass ordinances in any sort of regulation in Wyoming. It's something you really have to have community support for. And while I think they are very important for protections, it's something you do kind of have to proceed with carefully, as you do not want to frustrate your community, I guess, in trying to make them. So it can be a bit of a slow process, but one that I do think is meaningful. All right, so review. As far as the National Register of Historic Places goes, this is the review process that we go through for each nomination. So before a property within the jurisdiction of a CLG may be nominated to the National Register, the SHPO will notify the chief elected official and the CLG within 60 days, but no more than 120 days prior to the State Review Board consideration. And then within 60 days of that notice, the CLG, the chief local elected official, has to get back to SHPO with their notes, their recommendations. The nomination and any comments then goes to one of the scheduled state review board meetings, and they meet 3 times a year. After the state review board reviews both the nominations and the comments, nominations that are considered eligible are forwarded on to the keeper of the National Register. From there, the keeper can send it back to us with additional comments potentially, but many of them that come from us to them are just approved. All right, and this is, I don't know, less exciting slide. Um, it is about the Section 106 side of review. And taking it from our website, we define Section 106. Any project taking place on federal lands, utilizing federal funds, or requiring federal permitting must be preceded by a cultural resource inventory and project review in compliance with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 and these other statutes. Consulting parties is something I want to define, since that would be what your local government or certified local government acts as. Individuals or organizations with a demonstrated interest in the project, including a legal or economic interest, or who are concerned with the effects of the project on historic properties, may request to be consulting parties. Consulting party status entitles a participant to share their views, receive and review pertinent information, offer ideas, and consider possible solutions. A representative of a local government with jurisdiction over the area in which a project may affect historic properties is entitled to participate as said consulting party. And so that can be the local government official. But in 1980, the NHPA was amended to include certified local government status as one of those consulting parties. And this is taken from the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, Section 106 tutorial. And again, you can link to all of these to read more if that's something that you would like to do. So again, this is one of the, I think, most important aspects of being a certified local government. Is proactively educating your community about historic preservation and involving them in all of your undertakings. See some of the following examples of advocacy. Attending city council meetings, involving yourself with your local planning and zoning office, forming relationships with historic property owners, attending local events and meetings, publicizing all of your projects, hosting outreach events like workshops, tours, or talks, finding ways to involve the public as volunteers, and keeping an active presence on social media. And as far as this advocacy goes, here's some examples from 2023. Gillette nominated their downtown as a historic district and then celebrated that along with the town in May of 2023. Douglas has installed interpretive signage at the Pioneer Cemetery and regularly does interpretive work and events with the community. Natrona County creates interpretive booklets, each one about a new topic involving the county every year. And as of 2023, they're on their 8th booklet about the New Deal. Evanston has held 2 successful fundraising events in July of October of 23, which include the ongoing restoration of a steam engine in their roundhouse and raising funds for repairing the stained glass windows in a church in their community. Cheyenne had the culmination of a long project. It took 14 years to raise the $130,000 to fund it. It was a historic airport fountain outside the original airport, and they also held a celebration for everyone to see that both the water now works and runs through the fountain, and then also the updated terracotta tiles and everything. Albany County has also been working in their community on a West Side Historic District nomination. This has been a historically underrepresented community, and so they've been working really hard on involving everyone so that they can, the neighborhood essentially, so that they can give their comments and feedback. And it's been really great to see people basically take ownership of the history and unique architecture of the area. I have some additional resources listed here, and again, I'll make this available to everyone. And this goes from a national level to a local level. There's some really great information. There are presentations you can watch on your own time, but there are some really good free resources available. And then finally, it's my contact information. Thank you all so much for sitting through this presentation with me. And again, this is the first in a series that we are doing. The next one will be on historic preservation, kind of the history of historic preservation, to be held in October. And I hope you all have a wonderful day today. I will make sure to take time for questions.